The alien overlords had conquered countless planets, spreading fear across the galaxy. They were cold, calculating, and saw Earth as nothing more than another prize. Earth's resistance, while noble, barely slowed them down. In their eyes, humans were inferior, an annoyance to be squashed. The overlords decided that sending their usual forces would take too long. Instead, they summoned the ultimate hunter, the Predator. A creature bred for war, with a legacy of wiping out entire species. The overlords watched from their ships, amused by the thought of Earth's inevitable doom. The Predator descended upon Earth in a sleek, shadowy craft. As it landed, there was no fanfare, no warning. The silence was unsettling, but that's how it preferred it. Hunting wasn't about noise. It was about skill, precision, and control. The creature emerged from its ship, scanning the dense forests that covered much of the land below. It didn't take long for it to spot its first prey. The Predator was equipped with the most advanced technology in the galaxy: thermal vision that could detect heat signatures, cloaking devices that rendered it invisible to the naked eye, and weapons capable of tearing through armor. For the Predator, this was just another hunt. Earth would fall like the rest. The Predator moved quickly, effortlessly navigating through the wilderness. A group of human soldiers had set up a defensive position, hoping to protect what remained of their people. They were no match. With a flick of its wrist, the Predator's blades sliced through their defenses. The humans didn't even have time to scream. One by one, they fell, until nothing remained but the sound of the wind rustling through the trees. The overlords observed from above, pleased with the efficiency. Earth would soon be theirs, and the Predator would return to them victorious. Meanwhile, deep underground, Earth's leaders gathered. They knew they were running out of time. The Predator was an unstoppable force. Their weapons and tactics had failed them. There was no way to win this fight by conventional means. But one man had an idea, a last-ditch effort to turn the tide. Hidden away in a forgotten bunker, there was a relic from the past, a man who had once been too dangerous to be left unchecked. His name was John Rambo. For decades he had been kept in cryostasis, frozen in time because the world no longer knew what to do with him. But now, they needed him more than ever. The decision was made. They would wake Rambo. As the chamber hissed open, the cold air of the cryopod filled the room. Rambo's eyes snapped open. He didn't need an explanation. He was a soldier, and this was war. The briefing was short: an alien creature was hunting humans, and Rambo was their last hope. The world he had known was gone, but combat? Combat never changed. Rambo geared up. His hands slid over the familiar weight of a knife, a bow, and a handful of arrows. No high-tech weapons for him. He trusted what he knew, and what he knew was survival. As he prepared, the Predator continued its slaughter, moving from one group of humans to the next, completely unaware that its greatest challenge was just getting started. The overlords laughed as they watched the human forces crumble, confident that victory was within their grasp. They had no idea what was coming. Rambo had always been a man of instinct. As soon as he set foot in the jungle, it felt familiar, even though this war was unlike any other he'd fought. The trees, the dense foliage, the air, all of it reminded him of the battles of his past. But this enemy wasn't human. The Predator had advantages that Rambo couldn't fully comprehend yet. He knew one thing, though: it could be beaten. Every hunter had a weakness, and he was going to find it. The Predator had already begun its search, using its cloaking device to move unseen. It stalked the forests, scanning the heat signatures in the area, but Rambo wasn't a typical target. He knew how to blend in, how to make himself invisible even without advanced technology. He didn't rely on heat signatures or gadgets. He used the land. His eyes scanned the terrain, looking for signs of movement, subtle changes in the environment that might betray his enemy's position. As the Predator approached its next set of targets, Rambo watched from the shadows. The soldiers didn't stand a chance. The creature's invisibility allowed it to move in and out with deadly efficiency, leaving a trail of bodies in its wake. But this time, something was different. Rambo was watching, learning, calculating. He saw the Predator's movements, The way it used its tech, the patterns it followed. It was fast, but Rambo was patient. He decided it was time to act. Setting a trap wasn't difficult, it was second nature to him. He carved spikes from nearby trees, rigged explosive devices using what little equipment he had, and camouflaged everything with the natural surroundings. The predator wouldn't see it coming. As the creature continued its hunt, it unknowingly stepped into Rambo's carefully laid-out trap. The moment it triggered the first tripwire, the jungle exploded into chaos. Rambo didn't hesitate. While the predator was disoriented, struggling to regain its bearings, he struck. He didn't aim to kill yet, that would come later. For now, it was about sending a message. A blade flew through the air, embedding itself in the predator's side. The creature let out a shriek of pain, its cloaking flickering as it struggled to maintain control. Rambo disappeared back into the jungle, just as quickly as he had appeared. The predator, bleeding but far from defeated, was furious. This was not how its hunts usually went. It had never been wounded by prey before. It activated its thermal vision, scanning the trees for any sign of heat, but Rambo had anticipated this. He had covered himself in mud, masking his body heat, just as he had done in wars past. The predator couldn't find him. For the first time, the hunter was confused. Rambo watched from a distance. He had heard it, but this was just the beginning. He needed to break the predator down, strip away its confidence. It was strong, but strength wasn't everything in war. The predator relied too much on its technology. Rambo would exploit that. Over the next few hours, he set more traps, drawing the predator deeper into the jungle, forcing it to fight on his terms. Each encounter left the predator more frustrated and more injured. Rambo's traps were relentless, spikes that pierced its armor, snares that slowed its movements, and explosives that disrupted its vision. Every time the predator thought it had Rambo in its sights, he would vanish, using the jungle as his shield. The Overlords, watching from above, began to sense that something was wrong. This wasn't how the hunt was supposed to go. The predator was supposed to dominate, to crush humanity with ease. But this one man, was different. He wasn't running in fear. He was fighting back, and worse, he was winning. The predator, now limping and bleeding from multiple wounds, started to realize that it was no longer the hunter. It was the hunted. It activated every piece of technology it had left, determined to find Rambo and end this once and for all. But Rambo was always 2 steps ahead. He knew the predator would grow desperate, and desperation led to mistakes. The final trap came when the predator, believing it had finally cornered Rambo, fell into a pit lined with sharpened stakes. Its once invincible body was now vulnerable, armor pierced, and energy depleted. But Rambo didn't go for the kill just yet. He stood at the edge of the pit, staring down at the creature that had slaughtered so many. This wasn't about revenge, it was about survival. He had turned the tide, and the predator, for all its power and technology, had underestimated him. Rambo vanished back into the trees, leaving the predator wounded, confused, and humiliated. The battle wasn't over, but it was clear now that this fight wasn't going to be as easy as the Overlords had thought. The predator, once the embodiment of fear, was now cornered in a way it had never been before. Its technology, once its greatest asset, had proven insufficient against a man who fought like a ghost. Every step it took seemed to bring more pain, more traps that Rambo had meticulously laid out. The alien's armor, once pristine, was dented and cracked. Its thermal vision was failing, constantly disrupted by the environment that Rambo had mastered. The hunter had never been this vulnerable. It was starting to understand that its prey was something far more dangerous than it anticipated. Rambo was in complete control. He had transformed the battlefield, making the jungle an extension of himself. He moved like a shadow, unseen, unheard, but always present. Every time the predator thought it had gained the upper hand, Rambo would strike with precision, inflicting more damage. This wasn't just physical combat, it was psychological warfare. Rambo was methodically breaking down the creature's confidence, making it question every move, every tactic. The predator's frustration was evident, its attacks becoming more erratic, less calculated. Despite its injuries, the predator wasn't giving up. It was still a force to be reckoned with, its survival instincts kicking in as it fought to regain control. But Rambo wasn't going to allow that. He was relentless, pushing the predator further into the jungle, isolating it from any hope of recovery. With each new wound, the predator's movements slowed, its powerful strikes becoming weaker. The once invincible hunter was now bleeding, exhausted, and desperate. It had come to Earth to prove its superiority, but now it was just trying to survive. Rambo knew he was close to ending this. He had studied the predator long enough to understand its limits. While the creature still had fight left in it, Rambo could sense the growing fear. And fear was an enemy that Rambo had learned to exploit long ago. He used the silence of the jungle to his advantage, letting the predator grow more paranoid, more on edge. Every rustle of leaves, every distant sound made the alien jump, its reflexes dulled by exhaustion and pain. It was starting to break, and Rambo was ready to deliver the final blow. As the predator continued its frantic search for Rambo, it stumbled upon the remains of one of its own devices. Rambo had dismantled it, leaving the pieces scattered across the ground as a message. The predator stared at the ruined technology, its anger boiling over. It had never encountered a foe like this, a human who could outsmart and outfight it at every turn. The Overlords, watching from their distant ships, were growing uneasy. What they had thought would be a quick and decisive victory was turning into a nightmare. They had placed their faith in the predator, but now it seemed even their champion was no match for this human. Rambo, on the other hand, was focused. He wasn't thinking about the Overlords or the consequences of his actions. All that mattered was the fight in front of him. He had faced enemies that seemed unbeatable before, and he had learned that even the most powerful could be brought down if you knew where to strike. The predator was no different. It bled, it tired, and it feared. Those were the weaknesses Rambo was exploiting, and they were working. With every passing moment, the predator's desperation grew. It started using more of its remaining technology, trying to flush Rambo out, but it was too late. The jungle belonged to Rambo now. He had spent hours preparing for this moment, setting traps within traps, luring the predator exactly where he wanted it. It wasn't about brute strength, it was about strategy, patience, and knowing when to strike. The predator was powerful, but it was predictable. Rambo was anything but predictable. As the final stages of the hunt approached, Rambo decided it was time to end this. He had drawn the predator into a corner, where its options were limited, its movements restricted. The creature's once formidable presence was now diminished, its body weakened, its mind clouded with frustration and fear. Rambo had pushed it to the edge, and now he was ready to finish what he had started. The predator, in one last act of defiance, activated its remaining weapons, hoping to catch Rambo off guard. But Rambo was always a step ahead. He anticipated the predator's moves, using its own aggression against it. As the alien fired its weapons in a desperate attempt to regain control, Rambo moved swiftly, dodging the attacks with ease. The predator's final gambit had failed. It had nothing left. Rambo closed in, his movements deliberate, his eyes focused. This wasn't a victory born out of luck, it was a victory earned through skill, experience, and sheer determination. The predator had underestimated him from the beginning, and now it was paying the price. As Rambo approached the wounded creature, there was no hesitation. He didn't need to taunt or boast. The predator's defeat was already written in the blood that stained the jungle floor. With one final, decisive strike, Rambo ended the battle. The predator, once the most feared hunter in the galaxy, lay defeated at his feet. The Overlords, watching from above, were silent. They had witnessed something they couldn't understand, how a single human had taken down their ultimate weapon. But Rambo didn't care about their confusion. The fight was over, and that's all that mattered. The predator was down, defeated, but Rambo didn't waste time celebrating. This was a war, and in war, there was always another threat waiting. He stood over the fallen creature, knowing that its death wasn't the end, it was just the beginning of a bigger fight. The alien overlords had been watching everything, expecting their ultimate hunter to triumph without question. Now they were silent, forced to reckon with the fact that a single human had done what no other species had managed. He had beaten their champion. The Overlords hadn't planned for this. They saw humans as weak, easily dominated by superior technology and advanced tactics. But Rambo wasn't just any human. His battle-hardened mind, relentless drive, and unbreakable will made him something entirely different. He had turned the jungle into his weapon, used the predator's own arrogance against it, and now stood victorious. The message to the Overlords was clear: Earth would not fall without a fight. From their orbiting ships, the Overlords considered their options. Sending more forces was possible, but after witnessing the Predator's defeat, they understood this wasn't a battle they could win with brute force alone. Rambo had demonstrated that humanity could outthink and outlast even the most lethal threats. They couldn't risk another humiliation. Still, the Overlords weren't ready to give up. They had conquered countless worlds, bending civilizations to their will, and Earth was just another planet in their eyes. This loss was a setback, not an end. On the ground, Rambo knew the Overlords were watching him, calculating their next move. He didn't care about their plans or their power. His only focus was survival, and that meant being ready for whatever came next. He had spent his life fighting battles no one else could win, and this one was no different. The Predator was dead, but the war wasn't over. Rambo wasn't just fighting for himself, he was fighting for Earth, for the survival of the human race, and he wasn't about to stop now. He scavenged what he could from the Predator's remains, taking pieces of its technology to understand it better. The alien tech was advanced, but it had weaknesses. Rambo knew that knowledge could be the key to stopping whatever came next. He worked quickly, turning the Predator's own gear into tools he could use. The jungle was still his ally, but now he had more than just the land on his side. With the Predator's weapons at his disposal, Rambo was prepared to face whatever the Overlords threw at him next. Meanwhile, up above, the Overlords debated their next course of action. They had never encountered resistance like this before. Earth had been nothing but a small obstacle in their path to galactic domination, but now it was proving to be much more than that. Rambo's victory wasn't just a physical defeat, it was a psychological blow. The Overlords thrived on fear and control, but Rambo had shattered that illusion. He had shown that humans weren't afraid, and worse, they could fight back. This was a problem the Overlords couldn't ignore. Their discussions grew tense. Some argued for a full-scale invasion, to overwhelm the planet with sheer numbers and firepower. Others warned that such a move could provoke even greater resistance. Rambo had proven that humans were resourceful, and if one man could take down the Predator, who knew what an organized resistance could do? The Overlords knew they had to tread carefully. They couldn't afford another mistake, but they also couldn't allow Earth to slip out of their grasp. As Rambo prepared for the next phase, he reflected on what had brought him here. Every battle, every war he had fought, had led to this moment. He wasn't a hero by choice, he was a survivor, a warrior who knew that victory came at a price. The Predator had been a deadly opponent, but Rambo's strength came from his ability to adapt, to use whatever was at hand to win. And that's exactly what he was doing now. The jungle was quiet again, but Rambo knew it wouldn't stay that way for long. The Overlords couldn't let this stand. They had their pride, their dominance to protect. But Rambo had something even stronger: human resilience. He had shown them that Earth wouldn't go down easily, that humanity had the will to fight back, even when the odds seemed impossible. The Overlords could throw whatever they wanted at him. Rambo was ready. Finally, the Overlords made their decision. They wouldn't send another champion. They wouldn't risk another direct confrontation. Instead, they would retreat for now. Earth had proven too costly to conquer. But this wasn't a surrender. It was a regrouping. The Overlords would watch, waiting for humanity to slip, for Rambo to fall, and when the time was right, they would strike again. They believed that patience would give them the victory they sought. But Rambo didn't see this as an end. He knew they would return. The Overlords didn't back down for long, and he would be there when they made their next move. He stood in the jungle, quiet but alert, his mind already working through the possibilities of the next battle. Rambo had won today, but tomorrow would bring a new challenge. And he was ready for it. Earth wasn't safe yet. The war wasn't over. But for now, the Predator was dead, the Overlords had been beaten back, and Rambo stood as a symbol of humanity's defiance. He didn't need recognition or glory. Victory was enough. And as long as there was a fight to be fought, Rambo would keep fighting. The Overlords might have called for the Predator, but they got something much worse, a human who refused to lose.